Welcome to Achieving the Dreams webinar series, Equity and Design for Holistic Student Supports. And this brief and webinar that we will be discussing today is around increasing success in community colleges for student mothers. If you've been following us for the brief, you will know that this is a four-part series. And so we started out with discussing what we were learning. And then we moved on to a very timely discussion on supports and pathways and gateway for high school students into college. We are going to dig deeper today into addressing the needs of student mothers at community colleges. And the last webinar in our series will focus on supporting the success of students enrolled part-time. What I will say today, before we dig into kind of doing introductions of our speakers, we do recognize the unprecedented times that we are facing right now. Specifically, at the time that we planned these webinars, we were not in the middle of the current pandemic. So we do want to just stop and pause and thank everyone for joining us today, knowing that many of you are working remotely or coming up with different kinds of plans, be that for your working plans, childcare plans, family care, or just self-care plans, in addition to those of you who are still on campus trying to figure out ways to continue the education for students this term. So we wanted to just stop and pause. What we will do throughout the course of this webinar is that we will acknowledge and we will discuss some of the very pressing issues that you are dealing with right now. And so we hope to provide you with some information and as well as gather information from you that will help us help you as you address these particular challenges. As you see on your screen, we have a number of speakers today who are going to share information from a national perspective, from a campus leadership perspective, and from a student perspective. And so you will be hearing from speakers from Achieving the Dream, Meredith Archer, Hatch, who is the Senior Associate Director of Workforce Development and Academic Alignment at Achieving the Dream, Elise Mulliville, who is the Acting Dean of Student Affairs at Gateway Community College in Connecticut, and Gabrielle DeCastro, who is a graduate of Housatonic Community College, a class of 2018, and she's currently a student and soon to be graduate of the University of Bridgeport in May of 2020. Right. And so without further ado, of course, if you would like a copy of the brief that this is based on, if you have not had an opportunity to read that, you can access the series of briefs on the Achieving the Dream website. We will have direct links for you in our resource page as well at the conclusion of this webinar. And without further ado, we will go directly into our webinar content for the day. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Shauna. This is Meredith Hatch, Senior Associate Director for Workforce and Academic Alignment at Achieving the Dream. And as Shauna mentioned, today we are talking about increasing success for student mothers at community colleges. Next slide, please, Destiny. I'll talk for a moment about Community College Women Succeed. Over the past year, Achieving the Dream has engaged with thought leaders and Achieving the Dream network colleges to increase institutions' evidence-based supports that increase success for women in college and in the workforce. Because when women graduate from college, they can provide better economic opportunities for themselves, their families, and in their communities. We've also been having a conversation about this work on social media using the hashtag #CCWomenSucceed. And you see tweets that we've shared over the past year. We encourage you to join this conversation. Next slide, please. As Shauna mentioned, right now we're in an unprecedented situation across the globe. And to some extent, this message on the slide from Dr. Deborah King at Phillips Community College at the University of Arkansas is more true than ever, with colleges putting in place ways to support students who are not currently on campus. And we interviewed Dr. Deborah King as part of our research for the brief on increasing support for student mothers. And this is about how education can really, and post-secondary education can really be a strong point for students who are in times of crisis. And so I want to take a moment to invite Elise Mulvihill to talk a little bit about what her institution is doing to support students right now. Elise?
Yeah, hi Meredith. So what are we doing? Well, right now, currently I'm balancing homeschooling my kids and working remotely. So at this point, our colleges are closed and moved all education to online. And being the Dean of Student Affairs, my job is to make sure that all the processes that help support students are online. So we're working really hard in utilizing technology and really being able to connect with our students. In the last meeting, I stressed the importance of preventing isolation and how important it is for our students to still feel like they're part of the community. So one thing that we're trying to do is make sure we connect virtually via webinars, via programs, emails, newsletters, with our students. I just had a conversation with our director of student activities, and he's trying to get our SGA up and running on Microsoft Teams, and really trying to make that happen so that connection is happening for our students. We're doing the same thing for our staff as well, because we're all very much impacted at this point, and just making sure that we all have this connection. I said to my staff, I never got into the job of Dean of Student Affairs and expected to work from home. So it's unprecedented for this to happen. So it's critical that we make sure that our staffs are feeling included and that our students are feeling included, and that we're there to facilitate their learning with our faculty as well.
Thank you so much, Elise, for sharing a little bit about what your institution is doing. And others may wish to share this as part of the webinar. I want to, many of you have become familiar with Zoom this week if you weren't before, but there are a few ways I'd like to orient you to this platform. So the first, you can certainly ask questions throughout the webinar in question and answer, which is at the bottom of your screen. And you just type a question in, and we'll have a few times throughout the webinar where we pause and respond to questions. The other thing you can use is the chat feature, which is also at the bottom of the screen. So next slide, please. I want to talk for a moment about who student mothers are. Achieving the Dream shared these infographics that I'll show on this slide and on the next slide with our network in February, right before Dream. And over 4 million student parents attend college each year. And it's important to note that the average age of student parents is 32. 1 in 4 community college students are parents. Next slide, please. And what we know is that 70% of college student parents are women. And if you dig a little deeper, 89%, so almost 9 out of 10 college students who are single mother students are low income. We also know that with a degree, community college students can earn significantly more than their peers. It's important to note too that student mothers really have intersectional identities. So they're working students. They can be students of color. There are frequently students who are facing significant financial challenges. And Shauna mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that our next webinar next week is on part-time students, and many student mothers attend college part-time. So on this slide, you'll see some of the ways that colleges are increasing success for student mothers. And these are featured in the brief that this webinar focuses on. So the first effective way to support student mothers is to really identify student mothers in intentional and consistent ways and build relationships with them. This is really about knowing your students. And so some examples of this that are highlighted in the brief, and you can certainly read more in the briefs, is at Monroe Community College in New York, at registration each term, each student is asked their marital and parental status, because we know that these can change over time and the number of terms that a student is enrolled at college. Gabrielle is going to talk a little bit later in this webinar about her experience in college. But in terms of knowing your students, when I first met Gabrielle and interviewed her, she talked about a faculty member who knew her and actually walked her across the hallway to connect her with her advisor. So really, that's a result of knowing your students. The next is building systems and processes that can connect students with supports. And so this is not just individual supports, but it's support systems. An example of this, and Austin Community College just presented at our DREAM conference on it, is having multiple partnerships to support students in really receiving the childcare that they need. So they offer childcare in many ways, including through a partnership with the YWCA, offering drop-in childcare. It's important here to really consider student schedules when you determine when supports, personal and academic, are offered. And Elise just talked about how she's considering this right now and planning to provide supports through different mechanisms than her institution has done before. The third is really addressing gender inequities and promoting socioeconomic mobility. And here, facilitative leadership is really important. So at Phillips Community College at the University of Arkansas, students complete a career inventory, and faculty regularly share wage information about careers in different fields. So that's just a little bit that you'll be able to read in the brief that we wanted to share today. And I'll pass the microphone back to Elise to talk a little bit about the FESP, the Family Economic Security Program. And this is really a way to include all three of these that ways to interconnect academic and personal supports. And she'll go into a deep dive, and then Gabrielle De Castro will talk a little bit about her experience in college. So Elise?
Yes, so I'm really excited, and thank you for having me today to talk about the Family Economic Security Program. Next slide, Destiny, there we go. Okay, the Family Economic Security Program was an idea created by Fairfield County Community Foundation's Fund for Women and Girls. The Fund for Women and Girls is one of the largest women funds in New England, and they look to invest in sustainable solutions that will advance economic security, health, and safety for women and girls. The reason they chose FESP was because of research that showed that female heads of households were on the rise, and 22% of these households were low income. They felt a need to help bolster women's economy by working with a community college. They ran a pilot program with NORWALK Community College that launched in 2008 and addressed the barriers to graduation via comprehensive supports and prepared students to transfer to or pursue higher paying jobs. The target population was single working mothers, and the program served 106 students. The program showed higher graduation rates and acceptance rates at four-year institutions when compared to the normal population. Fairfield County Community Foundation, there it is. Fairfield County Community Foundation approached Housatonic to do another version of FESP in Bridgeport. FESP 2.0 would expand numbers and build scale, provide wraparound services utilizing a one-coach format, broaden student horizons, and provide programs for students and children as well. Here is a view of who our FESP students are. The representation of the FESP student matches that of our Housatonic College population. Here is the eligibility for the FESP program. Students must have completed 9 credits, have a 2.0 or higher, be Pell eligible, have at least 2 semesters left, and be working. Please note that we also do welcome our DACA and undocumented students that are low income as well. Students apply to the program and then they are scheduled for an interview. If they qualify, they go into an orientation. This slide shows you more detail about what happens during both of those sessions. Students that don't qualify are able to join our pre-cohort, which allows the students to have the coaching services, but does not have the monetary benefits. When we started the program, the students had 3 meetings with an achievement coach and 3 meetings with a financial coach. We received a lot of feedback from our students that this was cumbersome and they didn't like telling their stories to multiple people. And we moved to a one-coach model. This one-coach model involves a 6-meeting coaching model. Students must attend 3 hour-long meetings in a semester. On this slide, it shows some of the topics that we cover depending on the month. Please note that sometimes, depending on the student, there could be more meetings. Besides the 6 meetings, our students are allowed to drop in with our coaches at any time when they are feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or need academic assistance. In addition to the 3 meetings, students are required to attend 3 workshops. These workshops cover the areas of financial, career, and personal/academic. For students that have not chosen a major, there is career advising. This is mandatory for our students that are in general studies. The idea is to find a career that a student is interested in and a career that is in high demand. In addition, we offer employment readiness to our FESP students. We facilitate referrals to our Dress for Success program for interview attire and prep them for interviews. Our coaches also help with college essays and finding scholarships for our students as they move to a 4-year institution. As we identify more students' needs, we create workshops that we feel will help all of our students. And there's some examples. We also hold events for our students and their families. Here's an example of some of the opportunities that were open to our students and their families since the program started. We have been very fortunate to offer study abroad sponsorships for 6 of our students, and here's the countries that they were. We also have included some 2-generation learning as well, holding some educational sessions on campus for our students and their children. We also provide money for camperships in the summer in order to fight the summer learning gap. The parent is required to take a summer class in order to apply to that program. On average, we run about 30% more on our retention rate than that of an HCC general, our HCC general retention rate. Our graduation and transfer rates are also significantly higher, as you can see on the screen. Here are some of the amazing colleges our students have transferred to, and some of them have even been full scholarships. Our course succession rates are here, and you can see also that they're significantly higher. Here's the support for our scholarships from the Housatonic Foundation. Students receive a scholarship of $250 to $600 a semester, depending on how many credits they take. Our students are also eligible to apply for emergency funds up to $250 a semester. Emergency funds can be used for car repair, utilities, books, rent, etc. Some of our best practices are listed below and have been embedded into our advisors' everyday interaction with all students at this time. The program moved to Gateway and used existing staffing The program at Gateway has multiple funders, as you can see on the slide. The retention rates remain consistent with Housatonic, and the program is flourishing in its second year this year. Lastly, this is a note from our president who oversaw the program at both institutions. He has now moved to Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida, but you can see how much he appreciated the FESP program, and clearly the move from bringing it to Housatonic to Gateway was all because of him.
Thank you so much, Elise. So I am so impressed by the Family Economic Security Program, and was really excited to learn about how it's being scaled to other institutions in Connecticut. And I'm really pleased to introduce again and welcome to the screen Ms. Gabrielle DeCastro, who is now a 4.0 student at University of Bridgeport, working on her psychology degree, expected graduation again this May. And Gabrielle and I are going to talk a little bit about her college experience. So Gabrielle, could you talk a little bit about why you enrolled at Housatonic Community College and what you were hoping to achieve?
Hi, everyone. So I never went to high school, never attended high school, never had that opportunity. So after I had my son, I decided I wanted to earn my GED. So I did that. When I was finished, I was told by some of the teachers there that I should really pursue a career in college. My husband also was on board with that. I finally came around and decided to apply. It was a scary time because I had no idea what to expect with not much of a background in education. However, I decided to attend Housatonic because it was right there. It's pretty close to where I live. So it was very convenient. And I went and signed up and started school.
And in terms of what, you talked a little bit about enrolling to get your GED. What are your educational and professional goals now?
Well, now with community college onto four-year college. Right now, I'm going to be earning my degree in May, and it will be in psychology. I plan to get a job as soon as possible, and just so I can have an income and help my family. However, at the same time, I want to apply and earn my master's degree in psychology so that I can move on to become a psychologist in some area. I would love to work with kids in some aspect. And I've always had a desire to better people's lives in whatever way I can. I've always loved talking to people and helping them with problems, try to do problem solving. So I have some experience in that field, so to speak. I work a lot with young people already, so that's something I want to do. And I know that recently I learned that only 4% of psychologists in the US are minorities, and I would like to jump into that pool and kind of change that number a little bit.
Oh, that's terrific, Gabrielle. And learning about your goals has been so fantastic. And I can also attest to, even right before the webinar, Gabrielle was helping us solve our problems. So I know that you'll be excellent in your chosen field. We'd love to hear a little bit about what your initial college experience was like when you enrolled at Housatonic, particularly given you said in this interview you didn't have much educational experience.
Right.
And how was it?
So when I started, signed up, I was lost. That's how it started. I felt lost. I had no idea where to begin. I knew my saving grace kind of was like, I knew I wanted to do psychology from the get-go. So I didn't have to figure out what major I wanted to do. That helped somewhat, but I went to advising and I left and I looked at my husband and said, I still don't know anything because I felt like the advice I got was stuff that I already knew somewhat, so it didn't help. So there really wasn't much help. I was applying for my classes, going down that path, just guessing mostly. So I felt quite lost at first. So.
And what's an example of something you had to guess at?
Like what classes to really sign up for. I kept getting different information from different people. So I wasn't sure, although I wanted to do psychology, I wasn't sure what classes I really should be taking. So I kind of almost wasted some time because I took classes that I didn't really need for my degree, while I could have been taking something that was necessary. So.
Thanks for providing that example. And you were a student in the FESP program, but not at the beginning. So can you talk a little bit about the FESP program and what were the supports from the FESP? I guess how you got connected up and also what were some of the important supports?
Oh, gladly. So after my first year at Houston, one of my professors was a psych professor was talking in class about this program that is available for low income and people. So the office for the program was right across from the classroom that I was in. So I decided to just take a walk and go see what she's talking about. And that's when I met who turned out to be my coach, Daniela. And she made an appointment for me. I came back, had a meeting, and the things she was saying they do sounded too good to be true. I'm like, why would you help people like that? What do you want in return? So it turned out what they wanted in return is just for you to succeed. And so that's how I got to be a part of this amazing organization called FESP. And they just made my whole school life completely different. It was a complete turnaround. I was hooked up with my coach, who then gave me the best academic advice I could have ever gotten. I was put on a path. So now, before I had no idea where I was going and what classes I should have taken, should have been taking, but she helped me to figure that out and made a clear path. So I knew exactly what classes I needed and helped me to sign up for them. As a FESP student, you were able to sign up a few days before regular students. So that was one of the perks, which was really cool because you got into the classes that you wanted before they were full. She helped me gain confidence. I just felt like someone was there to listen to me and listen to my needs and my frustrations whenever I wanted. I would drop into her office all the time. They had gluten-free snacks in the office, which was awesome because I needed that. Every now and then you need to eat something.
Right.
And I felt like they became more than advisors and more than coaches. They became friends. They got to know me through some of the programs that they provided. They got to know my family. They still ask me by name for my husband and my son and how are they doing. Then they got to really know you and treat you with respect and really give you that support that you needed to get through what could have been a very confusing time. And they would encourage me and tell me, like, you're able to do so much more than, you know, I thought I could do at first. So they were definitely there to do a whole lot for me. Because of them, I was able to finish faster because they paid for me to take classes during the summer. So I was able to get that summer class through. If if it was just if I didn't have that support, I would have to spend another year in college, in community college. So I would not have been as far as I am right now. So they did a whole lot for me.
That's terrific. Really, those are such important supports, and that you were able to complete faster.
Yes.
And feeling very welcome and included, and your family too.
Yes.
I love hearing that they're asking after your husband and your son by name. That just brings a smile to my face. So I wonder, as a closing question right now, and a reminder to our audience, questions that you may have, you may type into the questions pane or into the chat, because we'll be able to see that and respond to it. But Gabrielle, what advice would you give to other student mothers who are hoping to enroll in college?
Do it. Yeah. Don't hesitate. Don't second guess yourself. I doubted my abilities for so long. I felt like even before I did my GED, I was thinking, am I going to be able to do this? I haven't attended high school. I don't have any background. I doubted myself, and I had so many fears for so long. And then I got that part done. I started college, met with FESP. They encouraged me. I started blossoming. I became super confident in achieving my goals now that I'm at UB. And before I started UB, I had no idea what their curriculum was going to be like. I knew nothing about what it was going to be like. But I started with such confidence, and I said, I'm going to graduate that school with a 4.0. A month and a half away from doing that, and I still have my 4.0. So if you really want it, you can do it. Don't doubt yourself. Just go for your dream. You can actually do it. It's not easy. I spent many nights getting dinner done, getting my son to bed, going to bed myself, setting my alarm for 2 a.m., getting up. That's when I did my homework and studied and got stuff done, went back to bed at like 5, got up at 6. So it's tough, but it's doable. And it just prepares you to do so much more with your life. What I can provide now after school for my child, I could not have done it without taking those steps and jumping in with both feet and just taking that chance. So you have to, definitely just jump in and go for it.
That's fantastic and great advice. I see from Barbara saying specifically, I got to read it because this is good. Congratulations on your achievements, Gabrielle. Really, they're
thank you.
Strong achievements, and congratulations. And hearing how you became a strong advocate for yourself. And I know that, when we've prepared for today, you've talked about how you really learned to advocate for yourself at Housatonic and continue to do so, right?
Oh, most definitely. My professors kind of run away from me now, so because I'm that person who speaks up and I do not let it go. This past semester, I took a class where I was given an unfair grade, and I fought. I decided I was not going to let it go, and I fought, and the dean actually was able to overturn and give me the grade that I deserve, because I proved everything, I printed everything, I wrote up everything, I did my work, I did my background work, and proved to them that I earned my grade. And he was just trying to blow me off, and I was like, nope, that's not gonna happen. And I encourage every other student in my class to speak up and do what you need to do. You have to fight, because you're there, and sometimes someone might not care, but you have to care. And if you're working hard, then you should get what you deserve.
That's awesome. And Sybil says, be that person. Kudos, Gabrielle. So proud of you.
Thank you. Someone was asking a question, but I didn't get to read it.
Let's see. Okay.
Like before.
I think there are two questions here. One is, this is from Julia.
Okay.
So what will you do post-graduation with your psychology degree? What do you plan to do?
I actually would love to work with maybe DCF or something to do with children. I really want to be an advocate for children. I think it's really important for us to speak up on behalf of our younger generation. And I think their life is just so worth it. We have to see, especially in lower income neighborhoods where sometimes the education is not what it's supposed to be, and they just need that extra push and that extra help and someone to fight for them and speak for them. And so I would love to do something in that area. But while I'm earning, I have to get my master's in order to do what I really want to do in that aspect. So I'm hoping to work in the meantime in some way. I do plan to apply in that agency for now to see what I can do. I'm not sure what will happen.
Well, congratulations. And those are excellent plans. Kind of knowing what your interests are and where you want to go is so important. And you've been able to develop that based on your interests and by your connections with other people. So that's terrific. I'm seeing lots more questions coming up. So I do want to transition into the question and answer portion of the webinar. And I think we will all be actually responding to questions. And I would encourage the audience to do that as well. Again, using question and answer and chat. I'm curious, Elise, if you have closing comments or things that you wanted to add based on what you just heard from Gabrielle.
Well, I kind of cry every time I hear my students from FESP. So, but I want to really empower and just talk a little bit about what she said about her confidence level, navigating UB. We really work with our students to ensure that they know and transition them into the four-year schools. It's very funny because I have conversations with Southern Connecticut State University who's interested in doing a FESP program because our students are going there and saying, well, where's your FESP program? So it's really exciting. But, you know, our students motivate us at, you know, every point of the way to keep going with this program and really working with all of our students to get there.
Great. And Elise, I know that you've told me before that the success of FESP, and when we saw the quote from your college's president about the impact of FESP and how that has really, you've worked to spread that and also build it into other supports that your colleges are offering.
Yeah, it's important. That connection piece is important. You know, I'll be the first to tell you that not every student needs FESP. You know, not every student needs that much support, but there are parts of FESP that should be embedded throughout the college, that connection, the career advising, those conversations, you know, but, you know, sometimes that's delivered in a one-shot advising appointment. Whereas our students really, the students that we have in the FESP program go through 3 appointments. So yeah, so embedding that and making those connections, it really comes down to theory. And as your student is connected, you know, a student that's more connected is more likely to complete. And so utilizing that theory and really just digging home and really asking your students, talking to them about their needs, helping them to navigate the system. One of the things is that confidence, having confidence in themselves, having confidence in the process of the college, the processes of the college, but having that confidence, having that ability to advocate for yourself, you know, it's an important tool in order to succeed.
Thank you, Elise. So now, you see Achieving the Dream on your screen, and that's our colleague Destiny Mitchell, who is running today's webinar. And so Destiny, if you could start describing and saying the questions that folks are putting into the question and answer panel and into the chat, our panelists can respond to those questions.
Sure. So the first question is, what piece of advice would you give us at colleges to specifically help single moms the most?
I've had that question before. So if I was to take one piece of the FESP program and try to implement it, well, I wouldn't say one piece, but very easily the connectivity, getting them connected to services. So providing them with a mentor-mentee would be very helpful. I also stress that emergency fund. You know, a tire blowout is one example of something that could make or break a student in a semester, especially a single mom, because they don't have necessarily the room in their budget to move forward or to fix that tire. So those are the two things that I would really stress home about, because the emergency funds are there just in case there is an emergency. Our students are taught to build a savings to be able to handle these emergencies in, you know, as they come up. But in the immediate, in the first year, really that emergency fund helps them to just give them a boost and to help them facilitate that barrier.
Gabrielle, would you add anything to that? From your
Right, I was just thinking while Elise was speaking, I did speak to so many single moms that are FESP students who was so grateful that their advisors and coaches even found them daycare centers. Just being able to have someone to bounce things off and to figure out how to navigate and definitely find their way. Like one young lady was having so many problems with her child who had some special needs, just finding a proper daycare center for him. And her coach was able to find a place for her. So she was really, really happy and grateful for that.
Our coaches have helped to advocate with our students through IEPs, 504s with their students, just really working with them on confidence building and advocating. So really that advocating and that confidence boost really goes all throughout everything. It's not just about school. It's not just about the education. It's about things they're doing outside, things that they're doing to help their children to be successful, etc.
And Elise, you mentioned emergency aid. Something that I know you've talked about before is even calling utility companies when students are in need.
Yeah, so we make sure when a student, especially an emergency aid app, comes in for a student for a utility, we make sure that they're connected to matching programs that are offered within the state. We make sure that they don't have any medical diagnoses that would put them on a no shut-off plan. So we make sure that everything's there. We had a student that had a child with asthma on a nebulizer, and therefore they shouldn't be on the shut-off list. So just taking that concern out of that student's realm, you know what I mean? They don't have to worry. Their lights will remain on. Their child will be able to get the medication. And so really advocating to make sure we've done everything we can with the student.
Thank you.
And so the next question is for the panel in general, but anyone who may have something to chime in, please do so in the chat box. So this question comes from Rachel, and she says, I just started my position at the beginning of the month, and our school currently has limited supports in place. Do you have any recommendations for connecting with and supporting student parents in light of COVID closures and the transition to online classes?
So,
oh, go ahead. Elise, do you want to take that first?
sure. Sorry, Shauna.
Go ahead.
So I would say the first thing I would check and see is if there's a ability to identify your parents, your moms on your applications, et cetera, or through the FAFSA database. You know, if the college has ability, and then you can then provide services, even if it's small things like webinars on, you know, maintaining self-care. You know, they're all over the place. TED Talks on organizing your time. One thing that I know we just did with our FESP students at Gateway and at Housatonic is we're talking to them about, okay, how are you managing this? Your children are now in your classroom space. So how are you going through managing that? I know for me, it's really difficult as administrator to manage that. My children and my husband are in my workspace. But you know, it's those small things can go a long way to helping your single moms, especially in this predicament we're kind of in.
And Gabrielle, I saw you wanting to chime in.
No, I was just listening to what Elise was saying, and yes, having my son home and my husband home, it's just been very interesting because I set up most of my classes for 2 days a week and only one for the other 2 days. So I was home with them at school, and I had all this time to do all my work and get all my homework done. And now everybody is in the house, and so it's kind of been interesting. I have a sort of a schedule for my little one now, and so I would set him up with work to do and rush upstairs and get some of my stuff done while he's working, and then connect again and take a lot of breaks. You just have to forget about getting stuff done all straight through, and no, you are going to be interrupted. I hear mommy like a million times a day now, and my husband is no better, so I wish school was open more so for him and not for my son, because he's worse than my son. So it's kind of tough to navigate the both of them and get things done, but we're making it work.
And so this is Shauna. What I would add to that is I think this is a perfect example of, you know, I want to first acknowledge that our schools, colleges, universities out there are, I think, doing an amazing job navigating uncharted waters here, right? So there's one, the immediate piece of how do we stay functional and just keep our, you know, stay operational and not even reaching for the ideal sense, but how do we just keep everything afloat? The secondary piece is if we're able to do that, and it looks like most of the schools have been able to do that, the next piece is that how do we do it well? So and I want to make that distinction. There are two different things here. So I love the question, because if you were in a situation where you were just trying to figure out what in the world can we do, a couple of things that we would just recommend. One, it's assessing what you currently have. You know, when you're in the middle of this type of crisis, you don't have time to go kind of buy the latest and greatest and go into the ideal design state. Whereas if you had more time, or perhaps if you were a school that was heavily resourced or had some of that planning beforehand. So Elise mentioned this earlier. One of the things I would say is, you know, looking at what technologies, what communication tools you have, what ways you can engage students. The other things is that remember that the conversation or the idea of students succeeding in class, the whole purpose of when we talk about things being holistic is that there's the integration of academic and personal supports. So the decisions that faculty are making now in their classrooms around, you know, how do we continue to have continuity in education, you think about exactly for the reasons that Gabrielle mentioned, Elise mentioned, you know, students being home. You know, for some students, it is an issue of having children or others in the home with them, and one not having a quiet place. We went through an issue in my own home where we didn't realize we didn't have enough bandwidth in our with our internet, and everything crashed because there were 4 other people here using it at the same time. And so you think about meeting deadlines. We've never tested it that way. We've never had 8 devices going at one time and everyone trying to homeschool and work remotely at the same time. So when I think about the policies that we're putting in place in the classroom, along with what we know about the student population and supports, things like being able to have some leeway where it comes to deadlines, understanding who's in the classroom, and that some people just may not have a place to study or a quiet place or even a place to access internet. If they were depending on going to a library outside of school to do assignments, on the weekend, or even a restaurant. Think about, some of our coffee shops or other places, and in many places we're limited now to the number of people that can be there. So just thinking about having some policies or working with faculty as well, for those of you who are working directly with students that need support, and saying, how do we create, one, a situation where we do have academic integrity and we are able to move forward, but we're also being merciful and doing the things that we know are right for the students that we have and for those situations. The other thing I would mention there too is that the idea of advocacy has come up several times. You have students here who maybe for the first time are in need, and they weren't in need before because their shifts have been cut. They work in industry in which hours are being cut or impacted. So perhaps they weren't a student who would have reached out, or they even weren't on your radar before as a student who was in a particular program. But as the weeks go on with this situation, they're going to be increasingly at need. And so that's also a population that you want to make sure that you are introducing services and supports to, that may not have paid attention to this in the past because they didn't need it, or they didn't think they needed it. And now they're at a point where savings or resources are stretched, or income is limited coming into the home. And they're kind of thinking, well, I don't know what to do because I wasn't connected to any of these internal programs at school previously. So those are just a couple of things that I just wanted to add, to the conversation, but definitely thinking about how you can take those of you who are working in student supports positions, how you can also work alongside with faculty in thinking about identifying student populations and what might be some of the unique needs that parents are facing now that they are at home with their children, in many cases full time.
Great. And so this next question, are there particular strategies that schools can adopt to help community for students while operating remotely?
Destiny, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Okay, I might have to rephrase this a little. Okay, thank you. So are there particular strategies that school can adopt to help students maintain a sense of community while operating remotely?
So I think, if you can cohort them into, so our student activities is really going at the clubs and organizations and putting them together. But even if you can cohort together different, groups of students. So that was the other thing that kind of came to my mind on that last question is, or can you identify groups of students that may be able to work together as well? So we're doing a lot of that stuff through teams. And creating teams of organizations and letting the entire student body know that there's still club meetings going on and there's still exciting things. We're doing some trivia for our students through our student activities, and we're looking to do some online programming on leadership, etc., so we can get them chatting in the classroom. That's one thing even my high schooler is doing. So she logs on to the classroom and at least all the friends get to chat with the professor, with the teacher. And so creating that kind of environment is what we're looking towards.
Gabrielle, what would you add?
That's similar to actually what my son, he's in elementary school, but when they log on to the things that they're supposed to be doing, the sites they go on, the teacher sends a message every morning, but the kids are also able to chat with each other. Yesterday was one of the kids' birthdays and everybody was saying happy birthday and doing whatever. They also send them to alternative sites where they can just have a little fun. And Mo Willens has this great lunchtime doodle thing going on. So you go on there and you learn to draw or make puppets or whatever to have a little, and then all the kids will take pictures and post them to show what they've done. So just keeping them connected and having them not miss their friends so much, because the social aspect of it is really tough right now for them. They don't get to see any of their friends anymore. So it's really a hard time for them.
The only other thing I would add to that is also thinking about this idea of perhaps helping to create study groups, also extended office hours. So you think about, again, going back to some of those challenges we talked about with people being, you're home, but you're not available during the day, perhaps. And so I love, Gabrielle, your example of you were doing your work at 2:30 in the morning. So certainly, I'm not saying that everyone should be advising or having, conversations with students at 2:30 in the morning, but being, given this situation, being more flexible with the hours in which we can connect and have direct conversations, utilizing video, utilizing just the phone. We can go low tech here, just to reach out to students and just to have that personal conversation. But moving beyond those 8 to 5 hours, knowing that students may be even harder to reach during that time, even though they're not in the classroom, because their bandwidth is stretched so much at this time. And again, the study group piece, whereas, there are some subjects that students find a really hard time taking online, and personal choice, maybe they wouldn't. But in this situation, in order to keep courses going, they need to now, and they're switching to midstream. And perhaps these are students who have never taken online courses before. So those sorts of ways in which you could reach out and, form groups, or even try to get people with similar schedules together so that there's more accessibility and more opportunity for students to connect with each other, and also to see how it's going as it progresses along. So there's the immediate response, and then once you've been in it for a while, how's it going, and what can we do for you, and how are your needs evolving, and checking in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to jump back in and also say that there's a need for both faculty and students, just to be open. One of my professors, we all switched to online, and she changed the class somewhat. So now more is expected instead of what we were doing. And one of the things I had a conversation with her about was due dates, because her due dates were kind of crazy. So I emailed her about it a couple of times. I'm like, can you please move this due date and change it to such and such? Because the due date was there for when we were in school, so we can bring our papers in and discuss it with each other. We're no longer meeting. But now we have 2 big assignments due on the same day. Can you move it? And she agreed to move it. So sometimes you just have to be able to speak up and say, this is kind of necessary, and this is not going to be easy for some of us to do. So be considerate and be open when you're approached by your students.
Right, and I would add to that, consider and be open of what's happening in all of our lives right now. This is a difficult time, and being patient and being, as Gabrielle said, open and flexible right now, because we know a little bit about what's happening in everyone's lives, but to Shauna's point earlier, we don't know the full extent of it in terms of students losing jobs or having to go into jobs when they feel uncomfortable doing so, students with changing needs, and students who will not be able to separate their families from their academics because they are physically located together now. And I'm seeing that we're getting very close to our end time of 1 p.m.
So are there any legal ramifications to identifying students via FAFSA?
So what you're looking for is household size. So for us, that rolls into our banner system. So it's not looking into their FAFSA app. It's already something that's in there. It may be the same at your school. So I would just consult your financial aid department. It also may be something that you ask on an application. Several schools have gone into an intake kind of questionnaire when your students come in. So you can also find that information there. And if you're not doing an intake questionnaire, I would say that I would totally try to implement one, because it really identifies some of these students that you can give supports even prior to the start of the semester. So those are a couple different avenues you can take if not, or asking. You could say that you're putting on a series of workshops for parents that are trying to adjust with, their children at home and doing their coursework, and sign up here. The parents will self-identify, I promise you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. Kind of in wrapping up our webinar here, just a few things to point out. There are some additional resources that are available. Everyone will receive these slides, so feel free to dig into these resources and or reach back out to us as you have additional questions or concerns. I will also say, Destiny, you can go to the next slide, please. I will also say that you please look for us to have additional information coming out very shortly from the Achieving the Dream network with additional information, resources, and supports during this time. And we do have one more webinar in this series, which is on March 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you have not registered and you're interested in that webinar, we'd be happy to have you join us. If you have any specific questions for our panelists today, yes, and or any questions about supporting students, maybe there's questions that we didn't get a chance to answer today. Julie Latin is our Director of Holistic Student Supports here at Achieving a Dream. Feel free to reach out directly to Julia via email, and we'll do our best to connect you to either one of our panelists or we will provide you with an answer directly. We want you all to take care of yourselves, be kind, be safe, be healthy. Practice some self-care and social distancing while we're in this time period, and we thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.